Hey, welcome to My Good Bad Brain. It's a podcast about mental health and being a person. If you dig it, check out patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. That helps support the pod. There's some neat little rewards there from time to time. And leave us nice reviews. Those are helpful. Great. Theme song. I mean, like, if you feel the nice reviews, leave them. Don't lie. Okay, bye. Welcome to My Good Bad Brain. I'm a normal person, so I'm insane. I've got depression and ADHD, but I'm doing better since I medicated me. I'm still not always sure whether I exist or what being a person even really is, but I figured out a long time ago that being alive is beautiful. Hello. Hi. How are ya? Welcome to My Good Bad Brain again. Today, the podcast themes are around sort of this strange moment in history we live in, being millennials or Gen Z. I have the distinct privilege of being one of the oldest millennials. I think technically they say millennial starts around 1980. But whatever, I'm 85. And it just feels weird. I'm probably part of the last generation that like bridges this gap between remembering a time when there wasn't internet and then now. And, you know, what that does to like what kind of people we are and how we look at the world and think of the world and weird things. And I had my buddy Dario on to talk about it. And I won't say too much here because Dario is somebody who I met when I talk about it. We talk about it in the intro of us talking together through Instagram. He's an artist and he wrote a book recently. That's kind of like it's funny. It's a funny, like sort of translation guide. It's really good for giving to like boomer parents or whatever, stuff like that about millennial things, aspects of millennial life and what that's like. And I like to promote his stuff because I think he's really creative and he reminds me of me, and we talk about that a little bit. And I just like other weirdos. I like to try to support other people out there doing stuff. And I didn't mean to do the book thing. I haven't really read much of it and just say, hey, on Instagram, check out this thing. And then I was like, Dario, because he posted some stuff and whatever. You're going to hear me say all this to him again. I thought he'd be fun to come talk on the pod. So he talked for a while. Before we get into that, just doing a little personal check-in because I think I've gotten some nice feedback over the last week from the last episode where I was being expressive about stuff I'm going through and been going through. And I got to just say that that's really wonderful to hear from people out there. I feel like we have this little quiet community, these secret, quiet, silent connections with each other that get created through this podcast and other, I don't know, there's got to be like, it's probably like a whole genre of like, I don't know, like reflection, recognition, media, examples of things that you're going through that feel lonely and then realizing other people go through them too. And then being candid about it helps you feel connected. And, it makes me feel connected, when I hear other people feel connected, the stuff I'm saying here alone into a microphone reaches out into your earballs and, it resonates, and then it resonates enough to tell me that it mattered. So thank you for that. It's been tough. I had like the really strong like thing today of like, oh man, I'm really still stuck in a little bit of a depressy thing, and what do I do about it? I tend to isolate when I'm in it, so the two things, like big things, are phone a friend, and it helps with the ADHD too. There's a strategy called body doubling. And if anybody else out there is just like having a tough moment, I don't know, I'd suggest like try to make a plan. That helped me. So in addition to my normal morning, not always, but I've been doing it more when I need it, especially list making, of stuff to do, my little plan of attack for the day. I start with like to do things that, like, whether they're dishes or showering or simple little things like that, I just put it on the list to go do it, and that helps me feel like I'm starting to accomplish things. But like I haven't been doing any of the things. Also, this is like one of the insidious things. Think about being in depression waves or episodes or whatever is like, you can't just snap out of it, you know? Sometimes that's the whole point. You know what's going on. You can't even do things that you know help you. Like, it's really hard to do your best practices. It's really hard to go exercise. It's really hard to not eat something that just like will make you feel bad, which is weird. Again, I'm like unwinding that because I'm unwinding my mental issues like I talked about last week about food and judgment of myself and existence and whatever. I'm trying to unwind that from also practical things that I know like have depressant or not effects, which is, I'm really more talking about like alcohol and stuff like that, which I have not been drinking. I've been feeling good that I haven't been doing that. But like sometimes just like candy and stuff can sub in for that. And I know that it's not like necessarily going to make me feel the best. Just like I know if I continue to like not exercise or move my body, I know those things, the way the chemicals work, that those activities really help me feel better. But when I'm in a depressive state, you're like, damn, it's really hard to get yourself to do that. So that's where like make a plan is, and reach out to friends. So I got a buddy who I work out with sometimes. I scheduled a thing to go work out with him again because I've been avoiding it, just to like have a pal to get through it, you know? And they were like super receptive and warm and helpful, and but just positive too. When I was like, yeah, I'm just having a tough time getting out of this rut, he was like, we'll get out of it together. We'll climb out together. And that made me feel fucking good as fuck, you know? And likewise, after I finish getting this pot out today, I'm gonna go sit with Allie and do study hall, like body double, because otherwise I kind of isolate and sit alone, and sometimes just get really distracted and get into bad spirally places. And just being in the room with somebody else working on something totally disparate, not talking, nothing, just can be so helpful. And I know those strategies help me, so I made a plan and I'm gonna follow through on the plan, you know? So if you're out there and you're having a tough one, just know that I'm having a tough one. Other people are having a tough one. I'm just going to keep reiterating that we are connected in this network of possibility. And, you know, I suggest trying to make a plan. Just make a list of things that you like or things that you know are good for you and help you from just an objective standpoint. And I've really been digging this metaphor for myself of the list making and why the strategy making helps is like, I feel like a box of Legos. I feel like a box of all these pieces of things and just a big mess, and I have no idea what to do with them. So I kind of have to write myself a manual. And so in the making of a little manual for myself for the day, give yourself a schedule to follow, things to do, a little instruction manual on what to do with your Legos. So it's useful because it's so like sort of blueprinty and stuff. I can almost like step outside of my experience moment to moment and do this little activity of a little assignment worksheet. And anyway, that helps me. So if you're having a tough one, my heart and also my head goes out to you, and I suggest these possibilities to you. I really do like this idea that came out of the last one, that I really think just in the possibility of hope, you've almost already done it. That like, that's something we can all have. And like, if one of us can maybe get out of it, then I think that makes it possible for the rest of us. So I know I'm a little bit down right now and I'm having one that's not the easiest, but just being able to recognize it and contextualize it with the wider knowledge I've gained over the last few years of learning about my mental illnesses, quite frankly, and understanding them as things that aren't me, that they don't have to be me, is helping me climb out of the hole. And I'm not 110% with it, but that's part of the thing, man. I've been trying to, my psychiatrist said this last week. She was like, try to judge yourself less. You know, I worked with this body worker over the holidays, and she was wonderful. And I had seen her a little bit before, a few months before, and I saw her again. I was like, hey, I haven't been doing that thing you told me to do, this exercise, not as much as I should. And she goes, that's okay. She's like, let's try to like adjust that language. Like, we talk a lot about the body as a problem and ourselves as a problem. Instead of being like, oh, I didn't do that thing, I say, I would like to make more space to, you know, sit in my hips a little more and practice that and spend some time stretching on the wall or whatever. I'd like to make a possibility for that. I'd like to bring that more into my life. This positive possible thing instead of like, I know I haven't been doing the thing I'm supposed to do. And that really struck me when she said like how we talk about our bodies as a problem. I was like, yeah, we do. I do. And I talk about it in just every way it could be. I talk about myself and my problems as problems. And I was asking my psychiatrist, I was like, you know, I'm feeling a little bit like the more I focus on my my problems, they're getting worse. Like almost like sometimes this therapy fatigue. I've been here so fucking long and it just feels like I'm making it worse by thinking about it instead of just living my life. And she was like, I think that you can get stuck in the problem if you keep thinking of it like this problem instead of just some parameters, just a different set of tools and things to work with and around. And that helped me to think about because I've been getting really frustrated. And what I tend to do is just say, fuck it, I'm not even going to pay attention to this mental health stuff. I'm just going to tough it out. And it's not, but that doesn't do anything about it. You know, I'm just thinking about it too much and that's going to go away. It might like put it in a closet for a little bit and I can live in denial and repression for a while, but it doesn't make me well. So this idea of being like, well, let me stop thinking about my atypical brain as this fucking problem that I can't fix and obsessing over my identity as somebody with ADHD or depression or whatever. And instead, just understand these tools that I'm going to have to utilize. And sometimes I can do it on my own with the listing and stuff like that. Sometimes I'm going to need to phone a friend and reach out for some support. Sometimes maybe it's just listening to a podcast, you know, some educational book or something I'll listen to about ADHD or depression, something like just help me with possibility. So I'm just sharing that where I'm at and some of those things. And, you know, I hope that we all fucking, I think we can all thrive, you know, I think we're fucking doing pretty good considering. And on that note, let's talk to Dario, my buddy Dario Civon, about, this weird world that we live in. He's like this abstract artist and it's just kind of part of what I liked about him. Like that his clearly like his art and his mental state and everything are a response to his world around him, that I seem to have a similar one, this sort of insanity of this millennial moment, this shift in technology that has made us such strange iterations of human beings, but maybe not, I don't know. Anyway, theme song, here we go. I hope you like it. Bye-bye.
I'm talking louder. I disagree with everything you're saying.
Great. This is good. These are good levels, I think. We're recording. I just got a tiny bit of that. All right. So this will be my, so I'll talk about what I thought we would talk about. You're Dario.
Hello.
And,
Dario Civon.
Civon. That'll be written down. But, I've known you for like a little bit of time. Like never too close. Obviously, we've only hung out like a couple times in person, like once and a half, kind of. We came by, yeah. And but like we met through the internet, which people do sometimes now, and I immediately, like, you reached out to me initially a while ago because you're an artist and you were making these garments, these shirts with like these absurdist designs on them, and you did it. It was a very like businessy thing. You were like, will you promote this stuff?
It was a classic like Instagram influencer situation,
which is fun, and I thought that was nice, and I was flattered because I don't do that stuff like ever, and I don't really have like I don't have like a huge following that'll be like, go buy stuff and then you'll make you a lot of money. So I just thought it was cool, and I also just felt like immediately, I guess parts of you remind me of myself, and I think part of it has to,
your sexy eyebrow.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean I do think physically even I was like, you're like a stronger version of me.
Our dads look identical.
Really?
Literally, our dads could be brothers.
That's weird.
Is he from the Midwest?
Yes.
So is my dad.
Where?
Indiana. Hammond, Indiana.
That's really interesting.
Literally, they could be brothers. Just
you ever done your 23andMe?
No, I did National Geographic.
Are we related, do you think? I wonder if
it wouldn't tell us that. We'd have to do
because we have to do the same one,
We'd
right?
have to do Ancestry.
Well, 23andMe I think does it because I do it in some of my families on there. And it's like you have your anyway. We'll talk about this off the air because I don't know. But so I had that feeling, and I really liked your art and like your sensibilities that were like to me, okay, I'm not going to be very concise with this, but I was like there. We'll get around to that. So your art was like this absurdist, interesting stuff. You draw, you do like visual art, but like you're definitely not limited to that. And then I think we talked a little bit about like lifting stuff or something like that. Like you had definitely this physical life also, which
yes, we've connected on that level too.
Yes,
because Jarrett's really clever. Like he's got great taste in functional workouts, and I'm all about functional workouts.
Yeah. It's weird because I also, we can talk about that at some point, I guess, in this conversation. I go through phases. I'm definitely in like a not phase now. I feel like very like not lifting things, moving things, barely doing jiu-jitsu. I don't know what, you're just getting weird. You know what I mean? You go in phases. But anyway, so you came into my life that way, and we just would stay messaging and periodically, but I just like liked your weirdness, quite frankly. And like that's like where you're centered, I think, in your outlook, but also being clearly talented and disciplined, like the way the things you make are good. And then
thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. And then it came back around that you had written this book that you made, and which is more stuff that just like jive with me so much, like in the sense of making your thing and putting it out there, but like actually getting it done, because I'm not as good at that. And quite honestly, I haven't read much of it yet. I've like flipped through here and there. It's called "I'm Not Moving Out, I'm Not Getting a Job, Screw You: A Millennial Field Guide plus Gen Z." And you would, diligently like poke me about it here and there, because you gave me a copy and asked if I felt like promoting it to do that, and I intended to. And I was just like, I want to like read it. I want to actually read before I do something, because anyway, So this happened, and we were talking about the book, and you were telling me how like, it's really like you've gotten nice feedback from especially like grown up, like boomers and Gen Xers and stuff, who it actually helps them understand.
That's really who it's written for.
Yeah, like a like a guide.
It's basically a guide to the millennial / Gen Z childhood, and like all the shit that hit us like all at once: the internet, video games, copious access to marijuana.
Exactly.
Like we had like all this shit hit us all at once. And I think, and basically I've found in my life that my parents and their friends just really were missing a lot about our lives.
Well, so I wrote this book. We'll talk, because that'll be kind of the big theme of what I felt like would be interesting to talk about, because then you put something on your story this week, and that was like about how you used to be you were a basketball player in high school, like and your team like state champions, right? Almost. Yeah, so like very competitive, very athletic, and then switching over to art, and this idea of like feeling like a winner and having the swagger of like an athlete, because swagger is an integral part to like athletics.
Absolutely.
And then that being weird and out of place, and having to like change that up.
Yeah, because I sucked. I was good enough to get into art center, but like I wasn't the king of every class with ease. So that sort of appealed. So just in my summing up my weird intro before I stop cutting you off so much and we have a real conversation, I felt like that was interesting to me, just seeing you be open online about that. And it reminded me of like, damn, I always feel like I have stuff in common with Dario and the book stuff I meant to talk about. And I've been thinking a lot about, because I was doing some research about like Gen Z stuff like earlier this week, and talking to one of my little sisters about it. And I guess the overall thought was talking to you and talking to each other about, obviously, your personal stuff. We'll always get into that, about like your personal like experience with your own mental health and being a person. But I think specifically related, because I feel like a weird kinship with you, we could talk about the weirdness of the world this millennial thing. That's my favorite topic.
Yeah, exactly. and responding to it with this absurd art, and like how the fuck are we people, and
Jared,
what are we?
That's my favorite topic.
Well, great. That's what I thought the general subject would be, is like the effect of and just exploring and having fun with, because I don't think we're gonna like come up with a fucking answer or anything like that, about like that effect on existential like experience and our mental health, directly related to this weird millennial Gen Z world. And like, I guess we could start with that. Like, what do you think is the fundamental thing that shifts? Because I know Gen Z is considered to start right after 9/11, but like what's the fundamental shift in our culture that makes us feel so separate from the sensibilities of like at least boomers?
Yeah.
Gen X, there's a little bit more crossover, because the slacker thing that they had kind of like bled into us. But the slacker thing did bleed into us, and that kind of like irony, and we took that ball and ran with it. But our irony, I think, is much sharper and like more consequential,
more refined because of memes.
Yeah.
I have
that's
a
our
whole
fucking
chapter
language.
on memes because like I would show memes to my parents and they would just it would be like it would be like looking at a Rorschach.
Right.
They just would have no idea what the heck that is. So there's a whole chapter or not a chapter, but like a sub chapter on memes. I think memes are a big deal, but I guess to get to your question,
talk right into the thing. I know it's going to feel weird.
Okay.
But it just if you just very like stand up-y.
Yeah, gotcha.
I'll probably cut that out, but
thanks.
we'll see.
So I think it's hard to reduce it. It's a kind of a combined effect. So that's why I put it that way in the book. It's the combined, I organize my book as the internet effect, the social media effect, the video game effect, the marijuana effect, and then the combined effect. Because I think
say it again. You're saying internet meme.
The internet effect,
right?
The social media effect,
right?
The video game effect, and then the marijuana effect.
Right. In marijuana, that's interesting.
You know, that hits some people more than others.
Well, you're from California too.
Yeah.
Which I think that's definitely.
Oh, right. You're not.
Because I'm not.
Yeah.
And I do smoke a lot of weed now and I see its effect for sure. I mean, but like that is the one that I might say is like more like local. But there is something actually, I'm going to step back off that because I think you could sub in for marijuana, like fucking promethazine or like Xans.
That was not at my school.
See, me neither. There was like, I mean, people would drink a little bit, but like as a cultural thing, this generation and their sort of something that attracts them to whatever the downer is that's available.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like 80s are very associated with like Quaaludes and Coke, you know? Like this culture that's very like up and blah, blah. And that's not what millennial is.
Yeah.
That, like the irony. So I was going to say the slacker thing bleeds into it, but like I do believe our generation, the big thing that links all those is internet.
Yeah.
Is like the interconnectivity.
That's the umbrella thing. So that's why I put that first.
Yeah. I really fucking think that is the big, I think like Herzog in his documentary, I think says this kind of stuff, but like that, like the internet is like as big or bigger than like the wheel, like
Absolutely.
in terms of its impact on society.
I think it's as big as electricity.
I think so.
And we're just at the beginning. It's like electricity was just invented 30 years ago. And then it just hit maturity 10, 15 years ago when we were growing up. Cause I'm 26.
Yeah, the internet.
So,
you're 26, which means it's a good too, because I'm 33. Yeah. So like so you're almost you're still millennial for sure.
Well, that was what I wanted to address because I was doing research on this, and within marketing circles, because these are the people that really have to know the details about demographics, within marketing circles, they have a distinction between people 27 and under and people 27 and over. So they consider they group everyone 27 and under with people who are currently 18. That's their demographic marker. Now, technically speaking, in pop culture terms, millennials can be older than that.
Yeah, I was
and I definitely my brother is roughly your age and he has millennial traits. But less than me. But
I think.
You know,
I joke about being like I'm definitely the oldest fucking side of. I mean, I think they say 80 was like 1980 was the oldest you could.
To me though, too much shit happened.
I think
between
so too.
80 and 90.
Well, I also think there's a major difference between fucking like in their formative years, how much internet did you have? And like I still remember not internet and not smartphones, and I started doing like AOL chat rooms when I was in like 9 or 11, somewhere in there, you know. So like, but if you go down to which is like
we had YouTube in 8th grade.
Yeah, which is
so to me, I think
like we started having it, but it wasn't what it is.
Right. That's why I say there's like a maturity that the internet hit. Like when I was in 8th or 9th grade. So I had it in high school, full blown like YouTube on my phone at all times because internet, being able to look stuff up. Because to me, that's the big deal. Is there's a shift in how much one has to know immediately at the drop of a hat. I think that's a really big kind of transcendental thing that people don't think about.
What do you mean?
Meaning like how much knowledge is required of you right now to be able to just relay versus what is the overall culture allowing time to look up? You know what I'm saying? Like
kind of, yeah.
So in the past,
yeah, like, give me an example. Yeah,
like in the deep past, they would have to memorize books, right? And
in
have
the
it.
Deep past,
In the very deep past.
I see what you're saying. Yeah,
and it's just since then, it's just been less and less and less and less to the point now where there's very little that you have to internalize and be able to know at the drop of a hat. And I think.
Right down to like phone numbers.
Right down to phone. I don't fucking remember phone numbers. I don't know if I lost my phone, I probably could call my dad. I couldn't call my brother. I could call my brother
only because we have when we got our phone numbers, we were on a family plan like decades ago.
Yeah.
And so our number's the same except for one digit.
So
you're like there, that's easy.
Yeah. So I think that's a big difference. And like not necessarily in a bad way. Like the book is very pro millennial. Like I actually really support us. I think I think there's a lot. I think we get a really bad rap. And so the title, the I'm not moving out, I'm not getting a job, screw you thing. It's a red herring clickbait title
for boomers.
For boomers, basically, it's like let's start at the worst stereotypes, and that's like that's the second page of the book. It's like here's all the negative stereotypes that we have to hear all the fucking time.
Right.
And then I deconstruct them and I acknowledge some aspects that are true, some that aren't. But all the while, it's a very pro-millennial book. And basically the gist of it is we're fundamentally oriented in a more towards the outside world in a more connected way. We're less egotistical because of that information diet thing that I was talking about. Because if you think about it, to be able to, or to be the type of person that wants to just be really, really smart and know everything about everything all at once. That's a very sort of egocentric thing. And I'm a fan of the ego. I like the ego. But but there's less of that now. There's less required of that now. So I think there's like more of like there's like a distributed ant colony network kind of vibe beginning to percolate. We're not 100%
I do think that's
yet,
interesting because I think a lot of the negative perception of like what this generation is that it is very egocentric because of social media. That's the whole joke about the snowflakes and the complaints, whatever. The irony of that being, of course, that like those are the people of the generation of like a house and a summer house and 2 cars in the garage.
Exactly. Those are the people saying we're the egotists.
Yeah.
Whereas to me, so I love, thanks for bringing that up. Because I make that exact same point. I say the first thing a millennial does when they figure something out is they post it online on a message board. And the way in my social media chapter, I personally think social media is incredibly positive force, though it can be misused.
I'm back and forth on it.
But here's my take on it. Feel free to disagree. My take is it's actually fucking amazing.
Yeah.
With a little downside. But the thing is,
overall, I would agree.
Because there's people like you, Jarrett, who one of your big things is posting like kettlebell workouts.
Right.
What a tiny, small niche thing. And as soon as I saw one of them, I was like, oh, I love this guy. He's got great taste in workouts.
Sure.
And then now we're sitting here talking over your kettlebell freaking videos.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that.
So there's a lot of micro networking or networking at a higher density, if you want to put it that way. Like I like this guy named Rich 20 something. I think his name is Daniel D. Piazza. And basically he speaks to entrepreneurs and spirituality. And he combines the two, and like he's like a spiritual coach for entrepreneurs / creatives, and he just like he's not a movie star, because if you think about it, in the past you had to be a freaking movie star or this or that. Now you can just be a guy who is very spiritual and likes entrepreneurship, and you can hold that energy. Not to sound like a
I will say about that is an interesting because I was doing some more like I didn't want to like I was working on a project, so I decided to do some like Gen Z research about some things about like Gen Z kids, because I am starting to be like there's some where like whoa I'm reached the age where I'm old. Like I'm like disconnected, or they have like cultural mores or jokes or things that I'm like, oh shit, they're different than me. And I think especially because like the media is still like the standard media, and the people who have money who are like funding the bigger corporations that like create like a lot of the stuff, traffic online is like still in that that red herring sells. You still get a lot of that like anti these youth kind of things, the fucking crazy kids kind of vibe. And And I was like, I just don't think that's true. And talking with like my youngest sister, who's definitely Gen Z. I mean, what is she, 15, I think now?
Yeah, so she's like borderline Gen Z, iGen.
Yeah,
right on the
she's
border.
like very young, which is like iGen, is that after Gen Z we're saying?
Yeah, that's like they've never not known an iPhone.
Right. There's never been she's like basically always had that. Yeah. While also having an interesting balance of growing up somewhere very natural, very like, like literally her mom, like living on like a forest preserve for a period of time, but like still being in this new world. And I don't know. There's like the entrepreneurship thing is what made me think of it. Is that like there's kind of like the negative stereotypes about people at this time are usually within the negative stereotype. There's like a flip side of the actual truth, which is like the one about like, oh, they're all like lazy or like egocentric and they don't want to go get just like a job or whatever. It's like, well, no, there are no jobs. Like we can be like this idea, like there was some article recently that was like, oh, more and more millennials and Gen Z are choosing to be freelancers. And you're like, no one's choosing to be a fucking freelancer. The companies don't offer these benefits anymore. Yeah. So entrepreneurship as a kind of like is the answer to like basically still wanting some individuality and some creativity. And it's sort of like, instead of just throwing your hands up and being like, I guess I'll just give up, like, which is what they kind of want to suggest that people younger ages do. There's actually like this toughness and this individuality of like, I got to make something happen.
And an innovativeness.
Yeah. Like, because you just don't really have another choice.
Right. And what's cool about social media and the internet is you can make your own job, your own little niche. And this is, I go on at length in my book about that. Because my parents didn't get that. They had a completely simplified, skewed version of social media. And I was like, no, there are people who love to cook and they love their 3 dogs and they cook in the morning and then they drop off their hand cooked meals to people. And they have like a little food delivery service within their neighborhood. And they have this beautifully balanced, integrated life. And what entrepreneurship and like really niche entrepreneurship lets someone do is tie in their career and their lifestyle. Yeah. And I think that's really what millennials are about. And I think that's kind of the way.
More like unified life.
It's unifying the whole life.
Like,
as opposed to seeing your 8 hours a day as this removed kind of like thing you just do.
Yeah,
you can tie it all together now, and that was not possible even 10 years ago.
Yeah, that feeling that you're just like selling your life for periods of time so that you can have it later.
I think that's a big shift, is that we don't like that idea. And that's because, personally, speaking from experience, I was around my dad a lot when he was working for Sony, and that's how it felt for him. It was like,
you know the movie Alien? Like the Alien movie?
Yeah.
Like there's I didn't like realize till like I was older that like the whole movie is just it's just a metaphor for like capitalism and stuff like that. And one of the things is like these space truckers who literally sell, like they're asleep for 2 years.
Right.
Like you literally just sell your years of your life.
Yeah.
And like you're like, oh damn, that's really fucking clever.
Yeah.
But also I think about that all the time now, that idea of literally that it's this or that. It's like either enjoying my life or selling it for so that I can have this other half. That is going away.
I think, and the thing is, we have so many influencers that have created that really integrated life that it encourages us to do so. So like my little example within my life is I'm a trained video game concept artist. I went to a really good school, art center. And like I totally could get a job working in the video game industry, but I want to do other types of art. I don't want to be locked into 8 hours a day. So I learned Shopify, which I was advertised to. Shopify advertised via Instagram to me, and they said, look at all the products you can sell. And look how you don't have to have any inventory. You can literally make a piece of artwork.
My brother was telling me about this like the other day.
There's these services that they print the product and they send it to your customer, and you don't have to do anything.
Yeah.
But run ads. So that's the job part of it, is you have to run ads and make the art. And like that caught me right as I was leaving school, and like now I have a business basically selling dinosaur merchandise. Is called dinosaurus.com, and it's just like it's just dinosaurs, everything. Yeah, I turned Candy Grab into Dinosaurus.
Dude, that's fun.
Yeah, and it's just the goal of that is just to make like, because I can draw dinosaurs all day long. I love dinosaurs.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite things to draw.
Dude,
I love cute forests. I love just the whimsy of it.
Yeah,
my art's very whimsical. So it's like I would be searching for game companies that would let me draw really colorful, whimsical stuff.
Yeah,
or I could just draw that for myself, put it on these products, and create a brand. And it's not a full-time job, and it's passive. It's semi-passive income, and like that was not possible 3 years ago.
I think the flip side to that's difficult for me, and like I instantly cringe about the idea of. I feel like I've been exposed to like a lot of gross and like just like annoying versions of it, like the entrepreneurship thing, or my family, my brother, and then we're really in like the Bay Area, like tech entrepreneurship stuff, and like there's so much like entrepreneur, or like even when you say this guy who's like spirituality and entrepreneurship, immediately I'm like, oh, fucking hate that guy.
You
like
do?
not even
like
knowing. Maybe I would in practice, but you know what I mean. In like,
well, let's break that down. Why don't you like what is it?
Yeah,
about
well, okay, two things. One, immediately I think of like the guy who would run those ads on YouTube all the time. So he'd be like, "Hey, I'm here with all my books. I got my Lamborghini, but also my books." Yeah. Like that's what I think of is like hucksters basically, and that like the internet has created a space for hucksters also, and also like in the same sort of realm I would say of the hucksters is like the professional cosplay models and the like people who like in influencers, a lot of them who like we decide that we just like them being whatever they are, and I guess what I don't like, and I think other people of this generation do, maybe the ones who don't get excited about the entrepreneurship thing, is this like there's a feeling that you are demanded to trade your life still for coins, basically, for something, and that if you don't commodify your existence or your creativity or something like that and figure out how to make it like a brand and how to and that basically this like these commercial thoughts about advertising that created like a whole fake bad world that created the boomers in a lot of ways, like now we've just internalized it. Like my girlfriend,
I have a rebuttal, but I see what you're saying.
My girlfriend on her podcast did this episode Colology about the beauty standard, the study of beauty standards with this professors, whatever. And something that really stuck with me about it that I thought was interesting is she was very bleak. This woman was like, before it used to just be magazines and you'd be like, oh, well, I know there's some separation where you go like, those are unrealistic beauty standards. It's on the cover of a magazine. It takes a lot of people to do that. It takes like a lot of professional stuff. And now we do it ourselves. There's like beauty gurus online, and you even Photoshop your own photos.
Yeah, even selfies.
So it's like we're self-enforcing all the negative shit that was outside of us before. And so the same thing, it's like we can criticize, because I think there's a lot of us in this age who see climate change and see the realities of late-stage capitalism and automation coming, that we have more socialist principles. We're like, like, there's not gonna be a job for everybody. There's gonna be fucking robots.
I talk about automation big time.
That's gonna be really interesting when that really kicks in.
Yeah.
But my point is that like you have this cognitive dissonance of like, I know I read the numbers that like the 80% of the new wealth that was created over the last years went to the billionaires. Like there's the top 26 richest people in the world have the same amount as the bottom 3.8 billion.
Yeah.
And so that there's this cognitive dissonance of like, we shouldn't be demanded to constantly be selling ourselves. And I think that's the scary feeling of, even if it's not for literal money, that social media creates a sense that I'm selling myself for likes, or I'm selling myself so that people keep following me, or that I need to stay relevant or present or do something like this championing of the concept of hustle. You must hustle and that will make you good.
I don't completely agree with you, but what you're saying is what I say in my book is we have a uniquely American fetishization of this, of like hard work and grinding.
There will be blood.
Yes, exactly. And I do agree with that.
You agree with that?
I agree that we have a fetishization. I can't say that word.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Of hard work and like grinding it out.
Right,
like
the lone guy who's going to manifest destiny. When the reality of all that was like, no, they're psychopaths who just murdered and took from people. Anyway,
you're like way I know I'm kind of left, and I'm like halfway between the center and you. But I'm an optimist. I think it's not that I overtly disagree with most of what you're saying, but what I see is it used to be like go work in a fucking factory.
Of course,
it's like, but I'm
true.
a talented actor, or I'm a talented digital artist.
Yeah.
I don't care. Go work in a factory. Then it was okay. Go work in a video game house studio, which is a lot better than a factory.
Of course, yeah.
Now it's go to art school, figure out what you love to draw, and make a brand out of it.
Yeah. That is a good way to look at it. That is a much nicer way to look at it.
Yeah, so I just have a glass half filled
I think you're right.
of what you're saying.
That is a good rebuttal, because I do think I think that is funny, because it's true. Yeah, you would have had to just be like, hey, shut the fuck up, go die in the coal mine, or we'll get somebody else to die in the coal mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, that is true. That's a nice way to do it. I think there's a part of you that just feels like existentially it becomes more and more apparent that like, why are we doing, like there's more and more like, who's making us do this? Why do we have to pay? And why do we have to put...
I think you should be a farmer, Jarrett.
I know. Well,
that's really simple. You plant your seeds.
I know.
You watch it grow and you eat it.
Do you ever see that fucking sketches of the sketch? There's like this British, I think it's from Peep Show, or I don't know what it is. It's not Peep Show. I don't know. It's from some British sketch group. And there's this really funny thing with this farmer. And he's telling you about this scam. He's like, do you know about farming? He's like, this is corn. He's like, you plant it and it grows out of the fucking ground. You sell it, people give you money. What? It's so funny. He's like, these are cows. They make milk. You can just take that milk out of them. And he's like, you sell that milk, people give you fucking money.
That sounds so funny.
Yeah, but it's like, I don't know. That I think what I'm saying is like, there's a weird feeling that like, if we see how wealth is working, if we see how like, even if you really make your money, you still got to pay the taxes, you still got to pay the rent, and all the places are owned by these previous generations. It's this weird feeling of like, we're sending our resources back in time instead of like forward to fix the fucking climate. Or what you're saying is like, I guess what I'm arguing for is like, the positive aspects of this new world where you can really be yourself and build something out of yourself that's your own, even if it is just expression.
And yes, you do have to commoditize it and brand it somewhat.
Because you got to survive somehow. Yeah, for sure. I think the thing is like, once you've had that thought and you're like, well, this is good, why don't we just keep seeing this through to the logical conclusion? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, to me...
Which maybe that's where we're headed.
I hate to keep plugging my book here, but like the very last chapter is basically the logical conclusion of like the journey of planet Earth.
Yeah, what do you think it is?
And to me, it's just a global hive mind.
Yeah,
where everything is automated. Resources are mined automatically. Basically, we have StarCraft. Yeah, like we have units mine the shit. We have systems that monitor the chemistry of the ocean. And basically, it's like Star Trek.
Yeah.
You know, you once said to me in our first meeting, we're either going to Mad Max or Star Trek.
Yeah, how many times are we going to have to go through Mad Max till we get there, though?
Eventually, we'll get there. I just think we're going straight to Star Trek.
That's beautiful. I really hope so.
I mean, I'm not saying there's not like a stock. There's bumps in the road.
Well, even in the Star Trek universe, right? The background of the Star Trek universe is that they did have a World War III that like destroyed the whole world.
Oh, really? And then it...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was
I didn't know that.
If you watch, I think in First Contact, maybe, there's like... You see them, the guy who first like sent up something, it contacted the Vulcans or something of the first like alien species they met. And it was like the meeting of the alien species that like propelled us to like make peace and become this better world. But that like, it was in the wreckage of this like nuclear war that like he was doing. Is if I remember correctly, I think.
Yeah.
But which I forgot till right now, but.
Okay. Yeah. So I think the future of humanity is like unbelievably beautiful. I think this whole destroy the environment thing is a really nasty stage. And I liken it to like a disease.
I kind of think you're right.
I have a whole disease metaphor where it's like, it's basically the elements that bring us to this amazing future. It's like lifting weights or like flu or something where you have to get through it.
Yeah.
And then you're stronger.
Yeah.
Your immune system's stronger. So
I do
think
hope
there is shaky times and hopefully not total chaos, but chaotic times in the next 20, 30, 40 years. But I think we have so much good shit in place already that's happening from the relative prosperity.
That's
the world's not perfect.
That's easy to forget about. That's easy to forget about.
Yeah, but it's like we got I have a list. Like we have nanotechnology coming down. Sorry about that.
All right.
That's so rude. Oh my God. We have
You're fired.
We have we have like freaking nanotechnology. We have unbelievably powerful AI systems coming down the pipeline. We have a a superior system of sharing ideas. We have the understanding that college isn't the answer. It's not perfect, that you have to be self-directed. And there's more information on the internet than ever before. Mm-hmm. We have an amazing entrepreneurial spirit, especially in America. Like America breeds entrepreneurs.
But you're saying that you think that you're saying you really believe that the entrepreneurial spirit is something that is like, because to me it like almost has like a bad ring to it now. But you're saying the aspects of it to you are like the individualism and curiosity and creativity, and that is
and just the, I mean, I hate to sound so cliche, but the spirit of humans to invent the next best thing constantly. Yeah, I think that wins out ultimately. And I really do. I just think it's that simple. It doesn't have to be some like big religious mumbo jumbo. Like it's just literally, that's what humans do. We build better tools. We're always building better tools.
I was talking about that last night, that like it's funny to think that every time, and almost every, except maybe like the Dark Ages, they might have like gone backwards a little bit after Rome. You know?
But then the Renaissance hit.
Yeah, but that like, but basically almost every time a human's been alive, they could look at like their, well, if your country wasn't destroyed by war, we'll leave that. If you weren't destroyed by war or famine, whatever.
There's like single generations that perhaps only saw devastation.
Right. But that without accepting that in the more stable parts of the whatever, that like almost every time in human history, you'd be like, this is the best time. You'd be like, we used to shit just in the ground, and now we do it in pots.
Now
Can you believe it?
Right.
You know?
And that's... and I think humans adapt to the time that they live in.
I think my instinct just goes to like the idea of an entrepreneur, or like this, like that the dark reality, even this conversation that we're having about like, it's always been the best time, you know, that is very limited to like the first world and the most civilized like places that had it like together, and weren't being preyed upon, or like the entrepreneurship at that is like inspiring or whatever isn't taking advantage of like all this like slave labor basically, or you know what I mean?
But I agree. Like it's complicated though, because China loves American business. And I'm not a Republican. Don't go there. I hate Trump. Okay, but I'm just
China's interesting to me because
they love American business. They've won it. They won it all.
Yeah, I get that.
And that's because they have so many mother fudging people.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was gonna say that when you were talking about the blip, the idea that this environmental destruction, it'll be like a phase of us growing. I think about China. I read something, and this might be wrong, but I remember reading somewhere that like they were saying that China's been around for so long as an entity, like thousands of years, by far the oldest like country, and in one form or another, and since they're also a communist country, that like they have these. They think in much longer timelines than we do. Yeah. Like we think in 4-year cycles basically, because the presidents, and that they plan. And I was thinking like, you know, because China's way ahead of us in so many ways now. Like they took pictures of the dark side of the moon. They sprouted like cotton seeds on the moon.
They have rock star engineers. They put engineering on a big pedestal.
And there is a lot of environmental stuff they've done.
I think Americans put more like the spirit of innovation on a pedestal, and then we hire the engineers to do it.
Maybe
they put engineering on the pedestal,
but we really put like weird shit on a pedestal. We put like celebrity and money on a pedestal, and
that
like
too.
Gross shit.
That's probably not healthy.
You know, I don't know. But one thought I had with China was like that if you do have a nation with a mentality of a group think to some degree, at least like sensibly, like we're going to think of it as like a communist sort of, what are we doing and how are we going to survive? That does create maybe less individualism and more like slave workers and people that are unhappy in an individual level. But I don't honestly think that much more than, because there's a lot of really unhappy people here. Yeah. And I think like the illusion of choice in a free capitalist society is kind of bullshit. But just the thought I want to get out about the environmentalism thing is like, I do kind of think there's a quality to them. They're like policy environmentally, because they're building all this like green technology and really investing in all that. That was like, while being some of the worst environmental offenders for the last 100 years or whatever, is like that they kind of looked at it on a real timeline. And I almost feel like they were like, we can do this to make as much money as possible up to this point. Yeah. And then we're gonna have to stop or we'll destroy the planet.
I hope they're that on top of it.
It just seems like seems like that to me.
I think so too. I think that's a great point about how they they plan on different scales. And also their whole structure is so different that they can have a unified kind of agenda, across,
because you can command it because it's
nationalized
industry.
Right. Yeah. So I forgot the
I don't know.
The general
positive
point is I do think that this earth destroying phase is a very short period. It's like 100-year period where it's like a flu, and then you come out better, and now you're immune to that to that strain.
You'll never do that again.
Yeah, it's like we'll never do, because you don't have to do that again, because once you attain a technology, like let's say like nanotechnology or like genetic engineering ability, once you attain that, you don't go backwards.
Yeah.
So once you and not saying there's not problems and weird political things around really immense new technologies, but it all kind of boils down to less environmental destruction.
Right.
So
what do you think? Let me shift gears slightly,
because I want to
like what do you think? Like, what do you think it is that is like? Because I do think there's a specific like awareness about mental unwellness is so much greater now and whatever. But I think you can look at the people in millennial generations and the people who are admitting that they have a lot of anxiety and depression and whatever, and they still seem much more sane to me than like all these boomers who never went to a fucking psychiatrist and clearly have like codependency issues and rage issues and ego issues and depression, anxiety, just not named. And I also think that's connected. Part of my thought I was having recently was like the way Facebook has become, which is like the domain of boomers for the internet.
Yeah.
And just like is also the thing that like with the Cambridge Analytica stuff, like they're so easy to like lie. Like there's so much like the fake news thing works because they can't tell the difference. Like we who had it even as children to some degree, like immediately know when something is like reputable or not, even though they're both online. To some degree, it's getting harder. It's getting harder. But it does seem, at least in the early days, but it does seem like there's like a lot more like boomer who's like, it's on the internet and kind of like see it evenly and are easily swayed. And I don't know, the thought about this at the end of it was like Gen Z and studies of Gen Z people, they said like, yes, they're extremely exposed to information on the internet, but they find that it doesn't really change who they are. And there's almost like an inoculation, like they know how advertising works. They know how disingenuousness works. They're very anti the idea of photoshopping, like the young Gen Z kids, and that they've found in these studies that like they kind of like learn how to socially interact online and then they'll use that in their real life, and that they're exposed to a lot of horrible shit, but where we all thought like that's going to break their brains, that like they've kind of just self-selected to go like, almost like they know how to interact with this tool in a healthier way than boomers do.
Well, that goes back to my point about like people's psychology adjusts to the times. I think exposure in general is a good thing.
Okay.
That's the whole point of the internet effect is you could sum it up as exposure, massive exposure. I think the more that you could look at exposure almost like an ant colony, how they transfer pheromones, how there's a threat and then they pass that chemical reaction deep into the hive and it travels very, very quickly. Yeah. That's how I look at exposure. And so exposure of all kinds, whether it's a positive or even if it's like porn or this, that, and the other weird cringe videos, like the fact that we watch someone amazing and then a cringe video, one swipe away from each other, that's very new. That's a new phenomenon. And I think our psychology has adjusted, and especially the younger generation, that's going to do something. So, and my guess is that it's going to be a positive thing. But that's also the source of anxiety, because anxiety is like, oh my God, there's too much shit going on. I can't handle it all. I can't find a stable base. And I struggle with some anxiety too. So like I can really relate to that. But the flip side though is that you realize that the world is a really big place and there's a lot of diversity really young. Like I remember seeing stuff on the internet when I was in 7th, 8th, 9th grade. We would go to this website called hell666.com.
Okay.
Something like that. Maybe it was heaven666.com. Okay. That's the joke. And like I saw a guy with 2 dicks, like literally a guy with 2 real dicks, functional, nicely sized 2 dicks. And then it was just a weird website of weird shit. And then I saw like a girl who could stack 12 plates on her head. And I just remember that was actually like a really big phase for me when I was around that age, 9th grade, where it was like, oh my God, the diversity of experience in the universe is like crazy. That was actually my personal journey into like my more spiritual side. It was that exposure when I was young. And I think how each person deals with it is different.
Yeah.
But I think it definitely is like a religious experience in like the literal sense. It's like, oh my God, there is so much fucking the difference in different people's realities is shocking.
Yeah.
And I still can blow my own mind about that. And that's a spiritual question. How you handle that? How do you see that?
Yeah.
Like Ram Dass would say, everyone's plays a different game in this life. Everyone's playing a different game. So I'm playing the game of Dario, the ex-basketball player who went into art and worships Michelangelo and is all, does this, that, and the other. But someone else is a sushi chef and they love the feeling of the knife slicing through the fish and then feeling it in their thumbs and pressing it into the rice. That's like, they get so much freaking pleasure out of that. Like, and so, yeah, there's all of that. And I think the younger generations are going to get their head around that idea that different lives, that people live different lives and that's okay. And so it's breeding tolerance, I guess is what I'm saying.
I think that's true. I think if you look at it that way, there's a sense of also tolerance for oneself.
Right, exactly.
Where you go like, I'm not
that's
good
profound,
or bad.
Dude.
I'm just one of billions of people.
One of the snowflakes,
Yeah, and in a beautiful, and saying like in this way of like, we do have very unique experiences and they're all valid.
Yeah, and I think, okay, so that was a really profound point, and then I just kind of realized this just now. I think the mistake that we make though as a culture is placing too much emphasis on like, okay, here's what I'm trying to say. People think that buying a Ferrari must be like, and riding it and driving it must be the best feeling ever. But it's only the best feeling ever if you internally, personally think that is a victory.
Right.
Whereas, so I think that the experience of the master sushi chef who just loves it and whose whole psychophysiology is all about their hands, which there are people like that. They love working with their hands.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit like that. I like working with my hands. He is in the same bliss as the guy in the Ferrari, but yet our culture worships the guy in the Ferrari, and we don't respect the little sushi chef enough. And I think that's the mistake. And I think that all of this exposure is working against that mistake that's currently present.
I think that might be true. Yeah.
Because, possessions. I mean, everyone's heard it before, but like, you can be rich and miserable and poor and so happy and some people have like 15 amazing best friends.
Right.
I'm the type of person, I've only ever had 2, maybe 3 really best friends.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's happier? The person who's not as cool as I am and not 6'2", like whatever bullshit thing. Like, but they have 15 really amazing friends that they can share everything with. And they have like a dolphin pod going through life.
Right.
Whereas I am very much a kind of do it myself. I don't let other people in on my life as much. I have 3 like best friends. I'm living a different style of life.
Yeah, but that's the emphasis. Is it's not like I wish I had more. If I had more friends, I would be a better version of me. It's like no.
It's like I'm getting enjoyment out of my style. And they're enjoying their style
and embracing
it. And so
like,
I think the embracing part is really what I'm saying is the tolerance is going to lead to the more embracing.
I think that might be true. It's also like by removing a basically like societally agreed upon hierarchy of things of value, and I don't know, it sort of lends you away from a binary understanding of reality, like of society, of value,
of winners and losers.
Yeah, that like I would be better if I had this, and I can tell because of this metric, instead of just like a sort of a looking at everybody. You know what's interesting? I don't know. So here's something that made me think of though. That idea of like a cringe video next to like a really amazing one or whatever is there was some kid on the internet who like sings like Broadway songs alone or whatever, really earnestly, such a theater kid, and kind of like holds his phone the same way every time. And I find it very cringe, but I like really enjoyed it. I was like, oh my God.
But he's like trying so hard.
He's trying so hard. He's very earnest, no qualms about it. And I was a little bit making fun of it to Allie, and she was like, "That's you." And I was like, "Huh?" I was like, "I'm not." She's like, "Don't you put like pictures, videos of yourself like doing shit, all, dumb shit and whatever?" And I was like, really upset about it. I was like, "But what I do is different. It's not that. It's more. It's like I'm crafting it. I'm aware." And she's like, And I was like, there's some validity to that. And I guess I wanted to explore that with you then too, as this thought of like, we do sort of still see people and go like, that one's cringe and that one's not, when it's like one thing for me is like the people who like constantly put a selfie up with the same face, same angle every time and do this thing, and then I'm like, I think I'm starting to do that a little bit, and
they have like the one good angle
or something, or they think they do, and you can just see their neuroses. Like they're fine, they could be anywhere, but like I guess what I'm trying to say is like, it is weird to be in this realm that is so much more about like at least zeitgeisty culture online of embracing everyone and being not bullying people and that kind of shit, and like, but that people still pick favorites, and we still say like, that person putting them out there and vlogging and being this thing is really amazing actually and relatable and I love them, and this person makes me really uncomfortable and it's kind of cringe and not good, and I think it's interesting that I don't know that we still can make that distinction, I guess, and that still happens. It feels almost like cruel, but not in a truly malicious way, in like the way that like lions are cruel when they eat zebras. You know what I mean?
Gazebras.
Like this tendency, this ability. I was talking to Terry, who was on this podcast a couple of weeks ago. We were talking like recently and about this idea. Like, I watched this Werner Herzog documentary recently. I watched the Antarctica one. I'd never seen it, and I was just having this moment because I've been having this fallout since a podcast a few months ago where I was thinking about like eating disorders and like how weird I've always been with food and body dysmorphia and shit like that, and like I'm being like, wow, these fucking creatures at the bottom of the ocean, they have like definitely a horrible savage life. They're like eating fucking each other all the time. I was like, they don't think about like, they don't think like, oh, I'm so bad, I ate another jellyfish or something like that. They're just living. And that it's weird to think that we basically don't have to struggle but do it anyway. And Terry was like, oh, but that's the thing. They were saying like, that's the important truth in there that basically we came to was like, it's funny to be in a society that we can see there's enough for everybody. We don't need to be doing the struggle that we do, blah blah blah, but then realizing no, we do need, like, we inherently enforce struggle for ourselves. And this thing that like seems like this thing of nature in us that is so used to like, still it's relatively recent in cosmic sense, in the sense of like what your DNA understands, that like we don't need to worry about getting eaten at night, that like, so we create a struggle because it's like what we know. And like we create hierarchies and we create winners and losers because it like feels like we have to. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, that's so deep. I'm like struggling to figure out where to pinch it off.
I know. That's the thing. Maybe there is no
That's
place.
Like so deep because like the first Buddhist dictum is life is suffering.
Interesting.
So that's why you meditate, because you need to have a pathway, a well-oiled pathway into nothingness, into bliss, so that it balances that life is suffering. And this was invented 3,000 years ago when they were like farming rice paddies, and like they considered that suffering too. Not saying it's not suffering. I'm just saying like,
because that gets back to the thing that we're saying a little bit, that joke about like whatever time you lived was the best time, but also even in those times, no matter what, they always were like, life is suffering.
If you're farming rice paddies, you have a bad hip. Let's say you develop a bad hip after 20 years. Yeah. Like now you can't feed your now you can't work in the day with your grandson.
Right.
Because you have a bad hip.
It's just weird that
to them that was like, I can't work with my family on the land. Fuck. Life sucks. Yeah. So that's why Buddhism was invented. The exact story.
Wow. Is that true?
No.
I was like, good. Wow.
No, but do you know the exact story of Buddhism?
I don't.
Okay, I can.
Well, it's a really
Siddhartha
simple story. Or whatever. No. Bodhisattva.
This guy who wasn't named Buddha yet, but a guy grew up as the son of a king. He was given absolutely everything, every food, every worldly pleasure imaginable, and he was fucking miserable. So then he left the castle, snuck out, and lived as a hobo, lived in shit piles, mud piles, and just was a wanderer for like 4 years. And then he said, I'm equally unhappy living as a hobo as I am when I had all the pleasures in the whole world. And then he had, this grand epiphany where he realized Buddhism, that it's not about, I'm not terribly familiar with Buddhism, but basically that you have to balance the real life in the sense of nothingness.
Yeah. That is
so
dope.
So life.
Which that is so funny because we were talking in the episode with Nick about trauma and kind of what a lot of what I think I'm trying to navigate in my own personal experience of things is like an integral understanding that you need to balance like real life with this spiritual existential nothingness that you understand is the truth of it, and that like.
Which some would say is also you. The divine nothingness is also you.
Yes.
But I'm just,
I agree with that.
Some people would say that. I think so. I think there's something to that.
I agree with that, yeah.
But yeah, I mean...
But there is something integral. And also I think like it seems to me a lot of like Buddhist principles, the way they like Zen, the art of motorcycle maintenance or archery or whatever, is like in any physical reality thing, you can find infinite bliss also. Like that same thing as every person's a poem. Like no matter the smaller you get and the more focused you get on something extant is like you will find that infinite truth in there if you want to.
Well, if you really want to get really deep, it's because all you will ever have is the moment. And even after you die, whatever you think happens, whatever, if you think something other than utter nothingness is happening, then there will be a time component. So then you're still stuck in some kind of time. And thus all you are experiencing time, so thus you still have this moment. Right?
Yes. And this moment is something outside of time.
Yes, exactly. So this very moment is infinite. And it's all you will ever have.
I definitely feel that.
So that's why this is where the ego can complement, because it's like, well, I got to do something.
Right.
And so I'm going to use my ego, the voice that wants Dario to have a well-meaning life.
Well, I also think something like really nice about that is like in this idea of infiniteness, like infinity, in the idea of infinity, there's something nice to think about in there that like when you reflect on your own life from the perspective of an ego in a negative way, and you get anxiety and you get all fucked up about how bad your life is, how pathetic or dumb or whatever your negative self-talk does. Mine's just mean and what a fuck up I am or whatever. That like it is possible if you have this sense already that you never think about other people that way. You look at this diversity of humanity and be like, everyone is living these fascinating, unique things. That if you could contextualize your own experience as that and go look at it from the outside and be like, if I think every person's a poem, like I'm a poem
too. You're a poem too.
My weirdness is that also. And even if I always loved that, like those like Taoist kind of like whatever the tradition came from, but there was this story of like the artist who like sat and didn't paint anything their whole life. They're for like 70 years or whatever, and then painted like one circle. I like loved that. I love like I was talking to Jason about this, that like art is so great because to some degree because it is so much context that like an artist who makes something really abstract or even like considered like bad or something like that, if they've done it after a body of work where they made amazing things, you'd be like, they're choosing to do this. There's a reason that is not good, quote unquote. Even like, you know what I mean? Like an abstract artist might do something that like a kindergartner would do. Yeah. But like in the context of their ability to do these other things, they choose to do this. It becomes much like richer.
Right. So the choice, see that it sounds to me.
I think the idea is like you could switch your own experience of your life to living in the choice of it and being like, wow, it's beautiful for whatever
it is.
That's
where the ego comes in.
Yeah.
It's all of that, I would say feminine stuff. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yes.
Like the feminine love of all.
Yeah.
But then it has to be balanced with the masculine. Meaning, and I mean that in the archetypical sense of the yin yang, like positive and negative force. So it's like grand appreciation at all times for all beings, And then because I only have this moment, I have to do something. I mean, I guess you could be a monk. Monks just choose to live in meditation for 95% of the time. But ironically, that's an ego choice.
Yes,
that's the irony.
Yes, it is.
It's like, to say the real world is nothing but a scourge, and so I just will live in my mind. That's an ego making a choice.
Right.
So you have to make choices because you are embedded in time.
Well, I've been finding it lately very empowering to not see. I think this is the difficulty with the idea of the entrepreneur spiritual person. It's like the secret or whatever. Like, this mindfulness is rooted in some really ultimately wonderful things that I like, love, and agree with. I think there's a lot of people who make a very shallow version of it that feels so gross and like upsetting that, like, but that going away. Because it's like the further I get on in life, like the more like corny, simple shit feels like really profound and true. Even with music, like Jason has been playing more and more jazz and Beethoven. He's like learning, and I'm like, music that I thought was boring when I was a kid is so much more interesting to me than like cool music. There's something.
Post Malone.
Yeah, I mean, I do like Post Malone. Not gonna lie, I fucking do like Post Malone.
I know you have a weakness for.
I know. I don't know why.
High pitched Welsh voice.
I love it, dude. He does this, like, he did a cover of Return of the Mac, which was like so fucking good. Anyway, but I digress.
Yeah.
But this idea, it has been empowering to live in choice in the sense that, like, and it feels very weirdly meditative. If I am in a situation where I'm doing some job that I don't like, or I feel like pressured into doing it because it's like for a family member and they're like, they fucking need, and I'm just gonna, if I've sat with myself and going like, well, are you gonna do it? Like, is it something you feel like you're going to do it? You're not gonna not do it. And I'll go like, yeah, I'm gonna do it because my mom wants me to do it. I'm gonna do it. Then you're choosing that. And just the idea that I'm living in the choice to do something that I feel pressured to do is so much more engaged with my own self and so much more like weirdly meditative to go like, it even branches into ideas like working out or if you're working on something that you enjoy but takes a lot of hard, tedious work, like not everything is like, that's actually really beautiful. Like, life is suffering. Like, not everything is going to be easy or comfortable or good or even like something you want to be. Like, it may be very intrusive, whether it's nature or the violence of humanity. Like, it may be very intrusive to you, but if you can live in the choice of like, but I am picking to do this, and if you're not picking to do it, I'm picking to be alive right now. I'm picking, in some existential sense, I'm choosing to be extant right now on this plane. Something about that, like, which is an ego thing, to say like, I'm going to choose, I is in there. Like, something about that is weirdly like goes through that finiteness of the I and becomes much easier to be alive in the infinite.
Right.
That's
it's
so interesting.
The union of the two. The two are interconnected intimately.
The yin yang thing's interesting. There's people who have like rendered the yin yang image in a 3D also.
Oh, that's nuts.
And you realize like we always picture it like this swirl, but it goes like that.
Let's talk about a 3D thing on a podcast. That's a good idea.
Right. But I'm just saying, imagining that like. I think with the 3D manifestations
it's
of like
a curvy ball.
Yeah,
of there's
2D
another
concept.
ball.
Well, everyone can picture it. You can fucking picture it. But that, I think what it does is it, like even the idea of feminine, masculine, yin yang, positive, negative. When you hear positive, negative, we already have a cultural association of morality, if it's good or bad. But positive, negative really just means like in the sense of
polarity,
physics, polarity, like something that's going in and something that's going out, or something that,
right,
and that you can
thrust.
If we can culturally start stripping away senses of binary good and bad, which may be a thing that is an interesting new artifact of this millennial generation, this internet generation, of like less of a sense of like these things are good and these things are bad, and there's one spectrum to put an experience on, into they're just different. They're all just all just are.
Yeah,
is profound, and that like can
and
be very
I think
helpful.
the internet contributes to that. The internet, social media, even it's so good at exposing us to all sorts of things: weird, funny, good, bad, scary, whatever. It's so good at that it's addicting.
Yeah,
it's like too good at it, and that's the downside. which you do have to be careful of, is like keeping your dopamine. That's something I'm a big trip I'm on recently, is like keeping your dopamine levels at a healthy level, basically.
I think that the way sleep hygiene is something people are aware of now, like how to sleep.
Phone hygiene.
I think that's...
Is that a phrase?
No,
like,
but that's what I'm saying.
I'm starting that phrase right now.
Yes,
your
that's
phone
exactly
is
what I was getting
as
at.
important of a hygienic... it's as important hygienically as your toothbrush.
Well, and I'm going to be a broken record about this, but like as the ADHD, my understanding of ADHD has increased, and understanding that it is just a dopamine deficiency, like the way your dopamine
it doesn't grab. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That like... I kind of think we're all training ourselves that way with the phone.
We are. So just a little rule. Sorry to be a parent here, but like my little rule is get up and do the 2 most important things of the day before you even look at your phone.
Oh, that's great.
Then take a nice lunch break. Maybe some leafy greens, a little bit of protein in there.
Smart.
And then check your phone. And then put it away, and then do the 3rd thing of the day.
Wow.
And then at night, be on your phone all the fucking time.
That's a great system, dude.
Because,
do you really adhere to that?
That's my system.
Oh, that's great.
Because the thing is, when you don't need to get back to concentrating, it's not so harmful. Now, like, I'm not a clinical psychologist. I don't know that 100% for sure, but I've just found that if I'm on my phone at night and I don't need to go back to concentrating, then it can actually be a creativity boost for me.
Wow, that's fucking
like,
great,
I'll go on my phone, I'll get ideas, and then I'll do some creative stuff, paint, whatever. Well, that kind of takes concentration, but you get the point. Is be very careful.
I'm like, I wonder if I could even do it.
Yeah, well, it takes a little practice because your phone is fucking addictive.
It really is.
The guy, I wrote a millennial book, and I couldn't escape the conclusion that your phone is really, really addictive. But
it fucking is for real.
So it's a hygiene thing. But at the same time, all of the influencers that I've been privileged to follow and get a lot out of, all of the art, like I can't tell you how many artists I've networked with, obscure artists that post like their sketches. Like you'd never get to see their sketch ever before Instagram, and now they'll post their first sketch, which if you're an artist, you can get a lot out of that. Or that's if you're really a musician, someone like your favorite guitar player just going.
Oh, I've done this.
You pick up little things about their method that you would never get.
Jiu-jitsu is something like that.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu's exploded because of Instagram, basically, in the sense that like, and there's like great like you would call them I don't know like legendary black belts of the sport who are like. Oh yeah, they're like there's like blue belts and white belts doing stuff only black belts did a decade ago because of Instagram. Because you put some dope technique out and like everyone can go see it and screw around with it and figure it out. And so the game is like so evolved.
So I see all of that as such a positive force. The thing is, it's too new. It's too new for us to really see just how freaking amazing that shift is. And because news needs something to talk about and salacious sells, they go, the internet is destroying people's minds. And I mean, anything can destroy your mind. Like a butter knife can cut your hand off if you really want it to.
Well, I think the people who are saying it's destroying everything really are like boomers and maybe a little bit after. And in a sense, it is destroying their world. Like, because their sense of things is not that anymore.
You could say their boundaries are being dissolved.
Well, I guess I would just say like, I mean, in an existential sense, that world that they knew is done. And it feels like a lot of the cultural mores and forces that they're trying to hang on to is like, and also I think it's important to always remember like pretty much every previous generation that's like, oh my God, it's all going to hell now. Look at the stuff that's on TV or what on the internet. Blah, blah. It's like, what? Sexism and racism was like so fucking rampant. The wars that they would have and the reasoning that everyone would get behind and whatever were so grotesque. And this illusion that it was like a better time with more wholesome people is like, that's not fucking true.
We always have, every civilization has rose-colored glasses. Every generation has
of themselves, of their youth. Glasses. Yeah. I mean, numbers don't lie, Check
like I talk about how Spyro was like my introduction to video games, and that was like,
so interesting.
It was an incredible, nearly sexual experience to like break open the crates and get the gems and stuff.
Yeah.
Like I love that game so much. And then I look at the first version now, like before the HD remake, and I'm like, God, that looks like crap. Like,
I know. And but
how was I so immersed into this?
I mean, I really like. I love that that Dario method of phone hygiene because like
And they say you should only try to do 3 big things per day.
Well, what you just described about the Spyro thing, like every kid gets that. Like our existence is so gamified. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of like the ding ding. Sometimes it helps. Like I've been trying to learn piano a little bit, and there's like these piano apps that makes it feel like you're playing a video game while you're playing real piano, and you're like, oh, that's cool. So I guess there's like ways to hack it that makes it like helpful and nice. But it is funny that like rush that you're describing. I remember that from video games. You break the crate open and it's like, oh God, I gotta get more fucking gems.
Did you ever play Crackdown?
No, I don't think so.
There was another, like, you'd get these agility orbs.
It was like an open world game,
Yeah, you jump around the city and there's these agility orbs, and it would be like,
oh yeah.
And they were everywhere. Like the developers put them everywhere. So it's just like you were this superhero leaping buildings, collecting orbs and getting more powerful.
That's really fun.
And to me, like, that's definitely addicting. So that's a bad thing. But like feeling intense bouts of like progress through, I think that's like, if you take the scheme of someone's whole life, I think that's really healthy, because when I'm on a roll with my art or something, it feels the same way as getting orbs in Crackdown. Yeah, now, it's not as sustained, but it's like I've taught myself, I've learned like what that progress feeling feels like, and I like it because of Crackdown and Spyro.
No, I think that's Tony
really Hawk Pro Skater.
Yeah, I was having that feeling completely. Good music in the game too. Well, for the time. Yeah. But like, there's a feeling about that's really good. This week I was having that a little bit. That like, I finally cracked into some work that was having difficult, and just the satisfaction of creativity when it's rolling is like so wonderful. And it is like, I think that's part of the danger of the phones or gaming and stuff like that to a certain degree, is like, you can get the same chemical feeling from the video games or whatever, and just don't ever end up doing the thing that you want to do.
Since you liked my little phone hygiene thing, let me give you just one more layer to it, which is, it's my understanding. Actually, Jared put me onto this a year ago. You got me into what ADHD is.
Oh, yeah.
So it's my understanding that you basically can desensitize your brain to dopamine.
Yeah.
So let's say you're on your phone for like 3 hours, just scrolling. Now, when you go to do an activity that's related to fulfillment, life fulfillment.
Yeah.
Your brain's desensitized to the dopamine that's giving you, because it's giving you some, but it's not enough to register, because you've just like, you're not sensitive anymore.
Right.
So my rule is I want fulfillment to drive my dopamine.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Until the evening.
True fulfillment.
Then I sleep and my brain goes back to baseline. And then I begin again, fulfillment driving my dopamine.
It's really smart.
So you have to highlight the activities that are really moving the needle as far as your deeper purpose, money, whatever, working out, like the wholesome stuff.
Yeah.
You have to save your dopamine sensitivity.
Yeah.
It's almost like if you're having sex, like taking a blowtorch and like, flaming your dick and then like expecting sex to feel good.
Yeah. That's really funny. Yeah. That's a good one.
Don't do that either.
That's good to segue from there into the second portion. I think we'll end on blowtorching the dick. Wow. I mean, like but it would be like blowtorching your dick, like with pleasure. Like you're doing the same stuff to it. You know what I mean?
Blowtorching your dick with pleasure. Maybe we don't have to.
I mean, we'll let it lie.
Yeah.
I want to move to the 6 quick cues, that like ending part that I always do. Right. So the first question is always like, have you been diagnosed with anything, or if, because I'm more and more like less worried about that question of diagnosis, because I think so many,
I was it doesn't
make it realer.
Are you pro diagnosing, or are you pro kind of leaving it open ended? Because to me,
both. I'm both.
I think you can really make a case for both.
I think
it's a personal style choice.
I think you can make a case for both. It's just overall, I really wish earlier in my life I've seen both, because my dad, I think, is still overprescribed or was for so long, and blah 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 blah, and it makes sense. And if you don't have some doctor working with you or encouraging you to build habits like that, once you get medicated, because the diagnosis is good for medication. The diagnosis is good for understanding removing a sense of personal ego and like a quality that like you're problematic somehow,
right,
or you're broken somehow, instead just of understanding that it is just a diversity of experience. It's a diversity of organism. You have chemicals that, like, quite frankly, ADHD and stuff like that would be really fucking useful if we still lived in hunter-gatherer societies. Like, there's a real reason that these brains exist. But that, like, it may not be easy in the way society is structured now, or as easy to live that way. And so I think that's very helpful to go, like, there's so many of these things that I've read now where I was like, oh my God, I'm not just a fucking fuck up weirdo. This is documented. A lot of people have this experience.
And that feels good for you.
That feels good because it gives me a sense of possibility and context, and that this is something I can, like, work with. And my psychiatrist said this week, I saw for the first time in a while, something about, like, if you could just endeavor to stop trying to judge yourself and your experience constantly, and stop kind of seeing yourself as a problem. Because I brought up to her, I was like, in the past, I've stopped therapy after periods of time because I felt like focusing too much on, like, my problems just ensconced them more. It was like, now I'm, like, thinking of myself as a problem. I identify as this mental disorder person.
I personally would be on team let my problem be open-ended, though like I can share my own experiences.
Yeah, of course.
But unless my arm is, like, falling off, like I would rather try to fix it myself, try to train if at all possible. I don't live with
I understand
ADHD.
What you're saying. Yeah, so I just think it's like, again, it's something to not judge and to look at a personal experience about. There is just no correct answer.
There's no
to
correct
that.
answer.
I do encourage people to I'm basically both things. I encourage people to believe in themselves, and to know themselves,
and believe in, like, their ability to, like,
self-heal,
self-improve,
work, to be happy. And that's all within you. I also think there's no shame, and it's actually part of ways you help yourself and do that work can be seeking assistance from, like, what wisdom exists, what knowledge exists.
Because there is a lot of wisdom and knowledge out there.
Basically, and that as long as you are not going like, oh great, now it's in the hands of a doctor or the hands of medicine. There's this, like, I think I mentioned on here before, but there's like a physical therapist account that I follow on Instagram, and they always go, fix your shit, and basically make this point of, like, part of the reason to do these stretches, these exercises, self-exploration, figure out where your pain is coming from in your body, is because no doctor is going to give as much a shit as you who's living with it. And so I think if you have
has the time to do, like, a 10,000 point by point analysis, perhaps. If you are fucking, like, go to professionals, go to people who know and are knowledgeable and can give you context and assistance for possible solutions. Also keep it the understanding, the empowering understanding, I think, that it's within your choices and yourself sometimes to really, no, always, to really affect them. I'm not going to say you can just, like, decide to not be bipolar, or there's no one who can just decide. I had it this week. You can't just say, and that's the frustration of it, is, like, you can't just say, I don't want to be depressed right now, like, all the time. Sometimes you kind of can. But one of the biggest frustrations I had this last week was, like, this feeling of, like, holy fuck, like, inside of my depression, I'm like, just pick something else, just be something else, and being like, why is your will so fucking weak? So it's odd that, like, the outside voices that tell you how to interact with your weird chemical issues, you also internalize and have, because sometimes that helps. Like, if you're in sports, sometimes you just choose, like, in jiu-jitsu, I've had that a lot of times where, like, sometimes, especially if you're in a hard roll or competition mode, I put in my mind, I say to people also, like, sometimes you just have to have an attitude of denial, where, like, someone gets a good submission on you that's tight or close, or a sweep that's like I'm not losing.
No, you kind of just go no in your brain, and it works. I saw a great jiu-jitsu black belt, Bernardo Faria, post something this week where he was like, it was like, do you agree or disagree? Which was like, technique beats strength, but will beats technique. And I don't fully agree with that at all. That's how people break their arms, is like, will can be beaten by technique, but will plus technique beats technique.
Yes.
And that will be. And so I think there's something odd about that idea of that middle zone of, like, get diagnosed. I wish I had earlier in my life, because this new understanding of ADHD that it's forced me to go learn about has really fucking helped me. I still struggle, but it helps. but I don't think anybody should ever feel defined by that thing. And I think it is an unfortunate thing in our society.
You have to be proactive is what you're saying.
You have to be proactive. You have to like live within it. And still, I think what you were saying earlier, this really fascinating observation, I think is true about a view of the universe that is less about good or bad and more about just like unique and here.
Yeah.
Is something you have to hold for yourself also. Is like, if the diagnosis helps you, then which it should, then good. And if the diagnosis is not helping you, then figure out how to make it something that helps you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, so you were going to do like the 6 quick.
That's the first one is, what do you have or what have you struggled with? What's your experience with that? And that is kind of attached to the second question is what medications or therapies you may have tried.
So I've struggled with anxiety, depression a little bit, and ADHD. But I've never taken any. Do
you mind if I add something you mentioned to me when we were talking about it too?
Yeah.
Because I was interested in this because I think it's related
and synesthesia.
Yes, the synesthesia, and you said that like you were maybe almost diagnosed with Asperger's. Or something like that.
Yeah. When I was a kid, like, I was like growling at people. They'd go, "Oh, hey Dario," and I'd be like literally. I remember that too.
How old are you?
Old enough to remember. Like, 4, 5.
Yeah.
I was like a dog.
Yeah, but like they went to like youth. Maybe that's part of your feeling about it. They wanted to like figure out. Like,
I never kind of put that together. But they were like, maybe he's Asperger's, maybe he's autistic. And then I started doing sports, and then I was always pretty good at reading, and I just kind of grew out of it. And I think maybe that did shape my opinion on that. Is like, wow, what if I would have bought into at such a young age that I'm autistic or something, and like how would that have shaped my identity
if you were like, that's who I am?
Whereas I never was burdened. I almost was burdened with it, but I never was placed, because I think my parents were more in the vein of like, let him work through.
Well, I do think that's an interesting. That is.
I'm not saying that's sound advice.
No, I know what you're saying.
That's my personal story.
Yes, yes. I think what's important about that is understanding, and I think this is part of my aversion to diagnosis too. Was like, I was like, what if I want to be a cop? They're gonna look at my thing and be like, he's a psycho, you know.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'm supporting your point. It's like you might have fucking loved being a cop so much that it would like shift your whole brain chemistry because you love like helping people.
Well, that's a very ADHD thing to say, because like they're saying one of the motivational because the idea that is true that like if you're passionate about a thing, you love a thing, you will do it.
You can fight through. You can fight through ADHD.
I mean, every ADHD person who's ever existed, a common thing they use in diagnosis is, I guess, is like they say. You always say, if I can get interested in something, there's nothing I can't do. And that experience is very real to mine.
So I had that through sports.
Yeah.
Because I started when I was really young, and I was good at it when I was young, and I actually remember this, seeing how concentrated I was. Like in the middle of the game, like I had this internal voice going like, damn, dude, like you're so 100% into this game. You're making 1,000 moves a minute, second.
That's so interesting because it's ironic because you're like third person saying you're so here right now.
Yeah, I had that many times. But the reason I know I have ADHD tendencies is that I've had really big bouts when I was like 23 with phone distraction. Addiction, distraction, where like I literally would spend hours scrolling.
I think a lot of us do. I really think we're like programming ourselves as a society.
Yeah, we have to be careful with that for sure.
Well, because I think
I'm very prone to it.
We only think of it as a surface thing of like something that affects like focus or something like that or whatever, time wasting. But it affects your emotional processing in a really big way.
It affects your dopamine system, which, I mean, everything in the brain is so delicate and interconnected, which is why meditation works so fast, is because a little shift is a lot in your brain in terms of your experience. But so I'm prone to that.
Well, I was going to say, just to not to leave it hanging, I wanted to voice this was like, your aversion to diagnosis is still one of like of social stigma. Basically, of like it's basically there's a system set up that doesn't like the societal and systemic view of these things is still not one of everyone's a unique individual. It's one of it's good or bad, and that like if you were at a young age called this thing, then they would put you in special rooms for this thing, and and,
and then you're not with other people, and like if you're a borderline case. you could, there's something to be said for being around the smart kids in the same room and growing and seeing that.
Yeah.
But I've also volunteered with autistic kids, and like there's people that wouldn't matter if they were with the smart kids. Like they're autistic. There are certain ways. So it's a feel thing. I really think it's a feel thing. So I know
what you're saying.
It's totally a feel thing. So I definitely,
like when you said the smart, it's this idea of like socialization and normalcy, quote unquote, like a typical, like an ability to flow within standard.
Yeah, if you have the ability to go, I like how that guy composes himself. Then I think then if you're that type of person, then you can maybe grow out of certain things.
Like it doesn't help to take people that you think are like different and shove them in some weird secret corner.
Right. Again, though, I've worked with very autistic kids who definitely couldn't have handled like a regular classroom situation. So it's a fine line of like, how do we as a society like keep people integrated and incorporated, not other them, but also get them the individual care that they might need.
Yeah,
that they might need.
Yeah, that's really profound.
It's really your parents and whatnot. So that and then I struggled. I wouldn't say I definitely dipped into full blown depression a few times, and I mean like for a day or two here and there. But what I've more struggled with is nihilism and figuring out like the base, like what do I base everything on? Because it all seems so vapid, and it's like in a million years, none of this is going to matter. And like, they say nihilism is the disease of the smart person. So I've worked really hard to like build like a really strong root base from eternity to myself. And like that's the spiritual journey. And like, I think people, not to toot my own horn, but like, I think if people met me now versus when I was 18, they like, I've had people go, wow, you are just like a million times different. You're a completely different person. And it's because I've found my base.
I think that idea, I do think nihilism is like a potential disease of the mind, of like of a fast processor kind of.
Yeah.
Because I think the one thing I've had to protect against it for some reason is some deep resonant message from within myself that like things matter. And
you struggle with that?
I do have that there's something in me that has always gone like things matter. And even if it's screaming up like from some pit somewhere that like like still down there like this echo going like, things matter, things still matter. But like there's something that saves me from fully going like full nihilism, fuck it, weird mode, like bad faith existentialism. And but if you don't have that, or if your brain is so fucking loud that it just, you can run away with you, and it's very good at explaining. Like, I think brains that are smart are very good at being contrary. They're very good at like arguments.
So
they will explain to you why all that Pollyanna shit that you can't explain about infinite, existence or infinite love, or like a something at the center of being that matters. Like, it's easy to explain that all away. Not easy, but
no, I know what
natural.
You mean. That's like the typical nihilistic atheist person of which there's a lot of around. But
the irony of that is a lot of people, though, well, nihilist is different than atheist. I guess.
No, they're different, but they can be paired.
Yeah, often. I think a lot of atheists are very humanist.
No, yeah, they actually are.
Which is an interesting, because you always come back around. You're like, I don't know if you know this, Mr. Atheist, but you're like actually more have God in your heart than like most of the God people.
Exactly. That's the irony.
Yeah.
For sure.
But like in the sense of it, they just don't, it becomes like an issue of like terminology more than like what we're talking about.
Well, you start talking about infinite unities and infinite love and infinite, and it's just that you can't wrap language around it.
Right. What I think you can wrap language around, though, is like laughing with someone.
Yes.
Seeing the joy in a human.
You can wrap language around the moment.
Right.
And the decision to be. And then it's undeniable that has echoing effects across all of Los Angeles.
Yes.
And then Los Angeles has echoing effects across the whole world. And so you can't deny, mathematically speaking, the echoing nature of everything. And it starts with the actions of the individual person to do something in this moment.
I think that's like where the "Don't Kill Yourself" list started from.
Oh,
me,
yeah?
was because like there are these small like I can sit alone and go down my rabbit holes and about like why things don't fucking matter and everything's pain and not a cool way and I just can't handle it anymore. And I can convince my shit of that, but then I could like smell and drink a cup of coffee and be like, fuck.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, there's no pretending that's not like good and magical and strange and inexplicable, that like it's so enjoyable.
Yeah.
And that like in those micro, like, yes, you can explain away meaning and existential, whatever, how much as you want, but that doesn't change like when you watch a video of like a baby who can hear for the first time with their thing and we all go like, oh my God, you know?
Because embedded in to have positive experience, you have to have negative experience.
Yeah, that's
true. The yin and yang thing.
Yeah.
So it's like it all like crunches down into this weird ball, and then every person I found kind of contextualizes that ball of unity in a different way.
Yeah.
I like Buddhism for that.
Buddhism, yeah, it is good language.
I also like Ram Dass, because Ram Dass was he's still alive, but he was a Harvard psychotherapist and teacher. So he's very Western until he was 40 years old. And then he went to the East for 10 years and like had incredible experiences and a complete spiritual awakening, and just has shed most of his Western principles, but can explain it to a Western mind. So Ram Dass is really cool.
Yeah,
he's a very good middle ground.
Yeah,
on
that
all
sounds
this.
cool. I know some people who are like really love Ram Dass.
Yeah,
he's
really
a lot.
Well,
so then that's kind of the second question is like, have you ever been medicated or tried any medications?
No,
maybe the marijuana thing is something to mention.
Yeah,
what's up with that? Do you still smoke marijuana?
Less now.
Sounds so cop. Do you still smoke marijuana, sir?
Oh no. I love marijuana. I think it should be handled with grace and care and delicacy.
When did you first have it?
I first had it when I was eating mad edibles, like the strongest edibles ever.
Really? Like
in
how much?
In high
like
school,
how many milligrams?
I would play basketball. Like I'd have a Friday night game, come back, and then eat an edible, and I'd just be alone for hours, play video games. It was this crazy internal journey, and definitely that changed my life.
In a good way or bad way?
In a good way.
Okay.
Made me a lot deeper and more... frankly, made me smarter.
I've experienced that with edibles too. They're scary for a little bit.
They're scary because they open up so many new questions, but then if you can have the strength to fill out those new slots.
How old were you when you started?
I was like I tried it once at 15, and then I was 18 as a senior. I was a little bit of an old senior. So about once a week, I was eating these hash edibles that were like knock you over.
It's interesting because 18 is like, I mean, you still got time. Your brain's still developing.
Yeah.
But it is older than like I
don't think 12-year-olds should fuck with it.
I don't think so either.
I don't think there's really good evidence for that.
Especially like you have so many fucking like being high chemicals in your brain anyway. Yeah. When you're like,
we said jinx.
Yeah.
No. Okay. Again, don't listen to me, but here's what I think. I think you should, someone should try it one time if they can get access to high quality stuff, not Mexican chemical sprayed bullshit. If you live in California and you can get like organic, really good weed, maybe try it one time when you're 14, not any sooner.
This is not an official.
This is not an official endorsement. Don't do
by
this.
Anybody.
Yeah, maybe one time. And then feel it out at 18. See if you can handle it. I always took like a week off usually. Yeah. So I would do it like, I'd have a big ass trip. They were trips. They weren't even high. They were trips.
I know, like that's my experience with some edibles I've had too. How intense? How many milligrams? Do you know? Do you like kind of measure it?
But they were like they were made of hash.
Yeah.
Because someone I knew made them, and I was having full blown synesthetic adventures. Meaning, so I was watching. This is the highest I ever was. I was watching River Monsters, the show
about fish, right?
About fish,
big fish
in like Indonesia. I close my eyes and I see before me a 3D form, like a orb, but it had all these like specific little pulleys and divots, like a moon almost, but like clay. And I remember going, okay, I just was looking at it dead in the face. Like it was right there with my eyes closed. And I was like, okay, that crater represents this particular type of tree. And the fact that it's pinched here, that's because there's fish like these big fish in the water. And then the fact that the whole thing is green, that represents the personality of the host, because to me, he's a very green spirit. And like, it was my first experience of data visualization, basically, or not my first, but like my most intense. And so I learned that you can, from those massive edible experiences, that you can map problems, you can map logic into visual structure. And then that might be a better way to handle it than dealing with it in bit by bit form. I'm very spatial. So everything is like, I put out on like a table, and then I go, that plugs into there and that plugs into here. And I think I got that way from my edible experiences.
Yeah.
I don't think I had that layer to my brain before that. So that was cool. And then I stopped for like college, did not smoke one time. First year of college, didn't smoke one time, never drank. I mean, I've had alcohol, but like,
you don't.
It's a blue moon.
It's not been your thing.
Not my thing at all. If I'm gonna get,
interesting
substance, it's gonna be pot. So then
that's also very healthy.
For 2 years of college, I gave myself plenty of cool down time. So like almost for like 2.5 years, didn't touch pot, because I was like, 18 to 20, that's a really big brain development zone where you can really I was enough of a intellectual to kind of know that. So I was like, I'm just going to focus and study and learn stuff. All the while I was listening to Joe Rogan, who's like smoking pot every single day.
Right,
I was smart enough to know that was not for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did it like occasionally in art school. Every 3 months, I'd take like 2 puffs off a joint.
Mm-hmm.
And then leaving school, I was like really burnt out, and like I'd been in this massive like 4-year study period where I hadn't really used pot all that much, occasionally, like I said. And I was like, it just felt like time, like my brain was developed enough to handle it. And I was like, let's kind of like turn it up a notch. So then I bought a really expensive vaporizer, because I don't like smoking stuff. Bought a really nice vaporizer. And then I was, for about a year and a half, I was smoking like, 3 bowls, maybe every 5 days.
Okay.
That's a lot for me.
Yeah,
never back to back on a single day.
So you weren't like using it too hard, like medicating wise. You were like,
never.
Okay,
but it was.
But it was like
it was more shamanic. I hate to
cool.
use that term, but it really was. Like I would practice music. I would get stoned and then like sing and see how that felt. And like there's definitely.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I would do experimental.
I like that.
Yeah, I would do experimental singing when I was high, and like I'd make sure I didn't have to do shit that night. I'd clear my schedule. So the way that I recommend pot use in my book, the way that I recommend using pot in my book is very shamanically, very intentionally, with a notebook, sporadically. But sometimes, like I've also had experiences where I was meditating during the day and then smoking at night, and I was having these really, really deep spiritual insights, like so deep, like transcendental, like I was getting chills. It's hard to explain, but very profound kind of like downloads.
In your meditations?
It was like I was meditating during the day, then I'd smoke
it was like preloading them, and then
preloading sort of, and then I was processing it, and I was like getting chills, like these like transcendental kind of moments of like coming into myself,
that's
something
so
like
cool.
that. And but sometimes I would be very unsatisfied kind of the next day. Like I felt, because I'm very in tune with myself, so it's like I felt like I needed to like smoke again the next day to kind of close off the trip. Like I didn't like fully integrate. So I felt like so on those occasions I would do it back to back.
Yeah.
But
I do like to smoke one, like to work out and stuff like that. I just like the way I've
done that once or
tune
twice.
in with my body.
Yeah, you get really in tune. So basically, long story short, I think you should use it occasionally, sporadically, and be very intentional with it.
All right, yeah.
But then, if it's the time and you ain't got shit to do, or you need to do 5 paintings and like it's party time, smoke 3 joints.
Yeah,
and get fucking high.
Yeah,
like get fucking high.
I agree. Yeah.
Sometimes that's
I
good.
do think it opens some shit up.
It
that's
opens
just
some
wonderful.
shit up.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't do that all the time.
Yeah. What's something cheesy you find inspiring?
Oh, that's so interesting. everything.
I know.
I love cheesy. Like I'm the guy that loves puns.
Well, I do too. Fucking really hard.
Like everyone's
I think we connected.
Puns.
I love sincerity cringe. It was always like a lot of the stuff that I like to make and do. I would put under
sincerity
that category.
Cringe. That was our first conversation.
Yeah.
I love shit like that. And like I do performance art, and like part of my act is I'll talk about like why courage is important. Like it's really, or like how the Black Death changed or strengthened our immune system. And it's like, you fought that flu off last week because of the Black Death.
Yeah.
And like I'll make these really cheesy points that are loosely true, and then they kind of devolve into like just cringe, weird, abstract stuff. Like, so I can't even answer that question. It's just like everything. Yeah,
like that's like how you interact with the reality.
Exactly.
That's so funny. Well, what's something dark about you? That's the fourth question.
Oh wow. My dick. Oh no, sorry.
That's pretty dark. That was a good answer. I think that's staying in. Unfortunately, I don't usually cut anything. It's too hard.
Dick is staying in.
That's what she said. Fuck. It's just so bad.
There's
all downhill from here.
There's our cheesiness.
Cheesy, also just the broiness that you can only hold back for so long.
What's dark about me?
Just something.
I'm very sensitive to dark things, so I don't watch horror movies. Hate them.
Interesting. Why do you think
I don't watch CSI? I don't watch anything to do with murder.
I appreciate that. I think that's good. I think our society is a really weird thing with
I don't
true
have
crime
like
right now.
that weird like desire to like live in those to try those worlds out in mental spaces. I don't have that. I guess the darkest thing about me is
why? Just because it feels bad, or does it feel like it touches something that's inside of you already? Or
I am the Archangel Lucas.
Okay.
Incarnated. No,
is that a thing?
I don't know. I just made that up. I'm really sensitive. So like really sensitive. So it's like it's a battle for me to just stay like feeling good and pure, and like that's the struggle. And I don't, and it just, I get derailed if something's too dark. It's unnecessary for me. It's almost like an efficiency thing. I know that's not a good answer.
That's interesting.
It's like I don't need to go there because I'm always aiming for.
You're afraid of being swallowed by it?
Yeah, or maybe that's kind of deep, but like I'm always aiming for a certain ideal. I'm very idealist and kind of like Greek in that way. Like I want my columns to be straight or to be beautiful, and my marble to be pure. Like I'm very much of that energy.
Interesting.
So, and I know that that's not completely feasible in the real world.
Yeah.
So my darkness, I feel darkness in like if my dad had a bad day and like I can feel that he's a little off.
That's
my darkness.
I'm like that.
I don't need murder shit to feel dark. It's like
I've definitely been exploring. Yeah. I mean, I think I've always had a dark streak in me, and I had the same thing. I didn't like horror movies or anything forever. Something in me is like shifted a little, where I'm like interested in exploring it now. I think I've been like afraid of it.
Stronger,
maybe, and I also think there's a thing in me that's like maybe the reason I avoided it was I was worried that it resonated with something in me, and I didn't want to feed that.
See, I believe in that too. That if you're really if you put too much mental weight on aversion, you're not in balance with it.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
It's because I have this whole canon of philosophy called effortlessness, and it's like the thing you're best at is the thing that you don't even think about.
Super weird, dude. I used to say that. I would say greatness is the easiest thing in the world.
Right, it's easy.
That there's a strange like when you punch the hardest, when you run the fastest, you feel like you're like when you're done, you're like, how fast was that? And they're like, and you're like, what? And this weirdness of like realizing in a lot of ways, I think this is why fight sports have always appealed to me, is this thing that even though you literally have another opponent, the reality of it is you're in contest with yourself to strip away intention and ego and thought and just respond to the environment. And that if you can do that, it's easy.
Easy.
And like you're and the irony of like doing less to be better.
Right. Yeah. I call that effortlessness.
Yeah, I like that.
I want to just be. I fail miserably, but I try to just effortlessly move from one thing to the next Oh, because this is a good point. Because I had a huge problem with certain tasks blending into other tasks. So if I did something in the morning, it would consume my thoughts and I couldn't fucking focus on any different types of things because I'm very obsessive, which comes with intelligence, right? Because you're breaking everything down. You're like running through all the decisions.
Yeah.
But the meditating kind of helps you shut down activity 1 and now begin activity 2. So I'm big on like ending task, beginning anew, and effortlessness.
Interesting.
And so anything that takes me,
structure.
I need that structure, and like anything that takes me off of that, that's my darkness.
I see.
That's literal darkness to me.
I see.
I don't need more darkness.
That's so interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that's really.
Yeah. Thanks.
What's the last gorgeous thing you saw?
Jared.
Oh,
Jared's beautiful.
I was like,
face.
people say that.
How many people have said that?
A handful.
Yeah. I'm not the only one.
Like, they say that because they're on the spot, and then also on the list of on the Don't Kill Yourself list is dogs. Those are the two most common answers. Is people say, "What's the last gorgeous thing?" Is that you? And then maybe.
The last beautiful thing I saw was I don't know. I just see beauty in everything.
I know, but I agree. I mean, I agree. I was just if there's anything.
That was my sarcastic answer. I kind of do, but
I know. I do.
I'll give you a real answer. Like I love plants. So
yeah,
these leaves and like your whole little forest down here. He has like a really great garden in front of his house, and I genuinely think that's beautiful because I paint and draw forests all the time. So I really am attracted to that. I don't think like those houses across the street, those aren't really that beautiful to me.
Right.
So I like plants.
These plants. All right, that's good.
Yeah.
If you so add to the Don't Kill Yourself list. You know the thing I do, which is it always for me starts with coffee sandwiches and lavender soap. But add something. It's just like a dark time in my life. I started doing it as an exercise of like things that are usually they're accessible, kind of common things.
That's cool. That's cool.
That are to in my subjective experience, objectively good things in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what do you got? Add something
to the thing that'll keep me from killing
what will be
myself.
on your Don't Kill Yourself list?
Drawing, painting.
Yeah. Is it like the textures of it at all, or like just like the act
colors?
Of it?
It's the colors.
Yeah.
I love colors. I can just lose myself in that, and I just the rest of the world doesn't exist, and I'm just like I feel like some weird sprite that can just spawn colors and shapes. And I find that so interesting. And I try to, when I paint something, I try to have no plan whatsoever. I try to literally pull something from another dimension out. And then the fun for me is like, whoa, I could never, ever have planned that. But I feel like I'm the only one that could grab that and bring it back to earth. So then I get a lot of joy from showing myself and the rest of the world like, whoa, look how weird cool this is. Yeah, because weird and cool are intimately linked for me.
I think so too.
I can't separate the two. And I call that the inner anthropologist.
What do you mean?
Some people are just anthropologists at heart.
Yeah,
I mean, like I love Young Thug.
Yeah,
he's my favorite rapper.
Great. Yeah, he's great.
Does he use words?
Sometimes.
Does he make sense? Maybe half the time.
Yeah,
but he's like the most interesting tree frog in the forest,
right,
or something,
right.
Or something like that. Like,
well, what you said is really a beautiful thing to think about. That how the individual creative human as like this sprite that you are just so generative.
Yeah,
that, like you're coming up with.
Yeah,
these
everyone
things.
is. Even if you don't do art,
I agree.
With the words you use, and some people will just say something or some people just feel bond between people so strongly,
right?
Stronger than I do.
Yeah,
I'm not easily bonded with people, but I kind of see people who are like that, and I can feel that they have something I don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm insecure about it, because I like myself, but like there's like this intense kind of brotherly bond thing that I find really beautiful that I don't have.
So you said that ball of unity thing that you said earlier. That's how I've always envisioned the universe as a big golden ball at the center of all things. That we're all these tendrils of.
Yeah, we're like these little like reflection sprites. Of.
Well, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, well, I mean that, dude. Thank you for
doing
this.
We had a good talk.
Where tell them the title of your book and they can find your book again.
So,
let's do that, and your Instagram or whatever you want people to know how to find.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, so my book is called "I'm Not Moving Out, I'm Not Getting a Job. Screw You: A Millennial Field Guide plus Gen Z," and it's written for that adult that boomer in your life who just has no freaking idea about millennials, about the effect of the internet, about the effect of social media, who just is like way behind the times. Maybe your grandparents, your dad, your uncle. And I've just had so many people read it themselves and really like it, which is cool because it wasn't really written for young people, but they really like it. And then they say, I gave it immediately to my dad. Like I have 14 people who've said that. Like I read it, loved it, and gave it to my dad or my mom. So, yeah, it's dope, dude. It's on Amazon.
Yeah, it's so dope.
And just type in Millennial Field Guide and it'll pop up.
Cool. Dario Civon.
Yeah.
Dude, thanks for hanging and talking to me today.
Yeah, it was super fun.
All right, bye, guys. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening to My Good Bad Brain. You're the best. Check out patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain if you like it. And leave us nice reviews if you like it. All right. Thanks a lot. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.